Hey everyone, welcome back, and here today I am going to do a video on color changes. This is assuming you already know how to do a double crochet and a treble crochet, or a single and double crochet if you're American or using American terms. So what I've already done, I've already crocheted just a little. I've done 2 rows of double crochet here, and I haven't finished it off. I've got 1 stitch to go on this row, but instead of finishing, I'm going to change my color. This is how I do it. I'm not saying this is the absolute best way to do it, but this is just how I do it. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to insert my hook back into that loop, and you can see there I've got my stitch, 1 stitch left there. But what I'm going to do this time, instead of going through and doing a normal double crochet, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, pull up 1 loop, so I've got my 2 loops on the hook, and then I'm going to grab my new color. I've picked a lovely bright orange, just so that it's very contrasting to what I'm using. It's probably a little bit thinner than this yarn, but it will do for what we're trying to accomplish, so it's fine. And what we're going to do is we're going to now loop that over the hook. We're just going to drop the previous thread, and we're going to loop our new yarn over, and then we're going to pull that through those 2 loops that were already on. And then you can pull it a little bit tighter, and then I'm going to do my chain stitch like I would normally do. Sometimes you do have to go back and retighten that, turn, and then now using my new color I'm going to go back through and start my new row with my double crochets. And you'll see there sometimes it pulls a bit loose. You do have to go and sort of tighten that. What you can do, if you're not going to carry this yarn back up, because sometimes when you're doing a long piece, what you can do, instead of cutting this yarn, you can then reuse it. If you're finishing again on this side with that color, you can bring this up and reuse it. But if you are done with that color, what you can do is just give it a snip, and then I usually just do a bit of a knot on the end there, and those will get threaded in. So yeah, that's pretty much it. You just go through them with your new color. Same applies if you are joining a color through the middle of your work. So I've just brought the new orange across there. You can see it's a little bit smaller just because this yarn is not the same ply. This is what happens when you are using 2 different types of yarn. They're not the same thickness, but for what we're doing it's fine, because we're it's just a show, so it's fine. So to do it through the middle of your work, it's exactly the same thing. I would then go through again, lift up that orange yarn, leaving the 2 loops on the hook, drop this one, pick up, say I'm going back to purple, pick up my purple yarn, go wrap it around the hook, and then bring that through the 2 loops still on the hook. So you're basically just finishing your stitch but with the new color, and then you just keep going with the new color, and that gives it a nice clean look. So you can see there it looks pretty good. And then again I would just tighten that at the back, probably snip the orange because now I'm finished with the orange, tie them, and then when I'm done I can thread them through, or you know, sometimes I don't bother tying them straight away, but it is good if you don't want it to keep coming loose on you, just to give them a quick tie. Even if you do a loose sort of knot and fix it later, that'll sort of stop it from moving. When you're coming back, we'll show you this just quickly. So I'm going to finish this row. Oops, get to the end. And same principle if you're working in rounds. If you don't know what I mean by that, I will be doing a video on rounds another time. But if you already know what a round is, similar concept, like pretty much exactly the same, except that you don't get to the end of the row and start again. So now that I'm coming back, what I'm going to do, if I want this to line up exactly with the row before it, what I want to do is actually, I don't want to change my color in that first orange one. I actually want to do it the stitch before. And so what I do, exactly the same thing, put it into the stitch, wrap my yarn around. So I've got 2 on. And this is a good example if you didn't want to, you could carry the yarn up. I find that a bit messy. I prefer to snip mine and thread them through. But yeah, if you wanted to do that, you could bring back your orange yarn again. It can look a little bit messy. You see I've got some strings hanging there, but as I said, you know, at the end you're going to go through and thread them through, so it will not look like that and you've got the finished product. So I've got my orange again. I'm going to go through those 2 loops that were still on the hook, and now I'm going to go through with my orange, starting in that orange section just there, and you'll be able to see that once I go through that new one, it's lining up with that one there. Oh. And that'll keep it fairly straight. So you always sort of stop the stitch beforehand when you want to line your colours up. And so this is the back, sorry, this is the back so far. But, so when you're done, it should line up on both sides there. And you'll see as you keep going, you'll sort of get like a little bit of a, like you will see some of that old colour in there, but otherwise what happens is you start to decrease on your colour if you do it sort of, if you start it sort of on the colour, if that makes sense. Alrighty, so what I'm going to do next, I'm actually going to grab, I've got a another one here for you. This is another little swatch I've done. Now this is done in our treble stitch, or our double in American terms. And again, I'm just going to stick my hook in there, and I've left the last stitch not done, so that you can see again how I would do a color change with a treble. And it's the same principle with any stitch, and I'll show what I mean. So for a treble stitch, what I would normally do, obviously wrap my yarn around the hook before I insert the hook into the stitch, bring my hook through, so I've got 3 on there. But this time what I'm going to do, I'm going to yarn over, I'm going to go through the first 2 like I would for a regular treble stitch, and now I'm going to put the colour through. So basically I'm bringing the colour through when I get down to those last 2 stitches. Let me just grab a colour. Hold on. Let's bring my purple back. This one should work a little bit better just because it's a similar thread. Oh, wait, we're attached. I'm sorry, I'm stuck. Hold on. Oh, just snip that. I'm still attached to my other piece. Okay, there we go. All right. So, bringing that purple now, I'm going to yarn over, just sort of hold it, and then bring through those last 2 stitches. Sorry, 2 loops I mean, not stitches. So then I'm going to do 2 chain like I would always start a new row of treble, and now I'm going to go back with the purple, and it's exactly the same for doing it mid work like we did for the double crochet, but instead of starting it, so like we won't put the thread, the new thread through when we've got 3, we're going to do it when we've got 2 back on the hook. And it's the same principle, like if you did a what's known as a double treble or a treble in American terms, which is basically another loop on your hook. So 2 loops to start, going through, and again, so if you went through the first, you'd go through the first 2, second 2, and then you would join the colour. So I'm always joining it once I've got those last 2 loops on the hook, if that makes sense. Yeah, so that is how I join colour. There is nothing wrong if you are not comfortable with that method. There is nothing wrong with finishing your row first. So finishing this row, and then finishing off. So to do that, I just do like 1 slip stitch, but I don't, I pull that all the way through once I've cut it, if that makes sense. That's how I finish my work. So let's say I've cut it. Oh, did I get it? No. Pull it through, tighten it, and that's finished my work. And there's nothing wrong with then going back, rejoining your work with the new colour in the first stitch. You can absolutely do it that way. It's probably not quite as neat when you're finished, but that's totally fine. So to start your new colour doing it this way, you would do a slip stitch, or in this case I would do a double, I would do chain 2. So you sort of do 1 chain, like I would do 1 chain if I was doing starting a double, or I would chain 2 with this one. I've chained it with the new colour, and then I'm wrapping over and back into the same stitch. I'm doing my double crochet, and that's kind of like sorry, bring it back over here, and that's kind of like ignoring, you know, your foundation chain. Similar sort of process, but starting a new colour. And again, you can go back and tie this off with the old thread if you wish, just to keep it together. So that is another way of doing it. Another so that's one way of doing it. Another way to join like that is to do a standing stitch. And what I mean by that is, what you would do is wrap your yarn around the hook first. It's a little bit tricky to do, so it might not be ideal when you're just starting out. Then inserting, so I know it's got nothing to go on, you kind of got to hold it with your hand over here. So then inserting, bringing that through, and then bringing, so we're still holding this yarn over here, but you're bringing your hook through and then around that stitch, and then through again, and you sort of done it sort of a standing one. I think there's actually a better way of doing that, but yeah, it's another way that people tend to do it. That I think that was a little bit wrong I did there, but so I do it generally the other way. Again, if you're mid work, you can, I do it a little bit differently. I would do just like a slip, oops, I would just do like a chain 1, oops, sorry. So you could do, there's a couple of ways you could do it. You could do a chain 2 and count that as a stitch and then keep going. And what I mean by count by a stitch, what you would do then, oops, is when you So this is just if you're starting sort of midway through. Otherwise, I recommend doing it the other way that I was showing you before. But then, but doing it this way, what you do is when you're coming back with your following row, you would finish in the chain rather than in this stitch. You can absolutely leave the chain and ignore it. Oops. Do your double stitch in the same stitch and ignore it. It might just be that you've just got that extra little edge there. So I'm going to have to do a bit of homework and double check on how to do the standing double crochet, but standing treble, but you get the idea. So that's basically how I do it, how I join my colours. It does take a little bit of practice, and also when you're doing a lot of colours where you want them to line up, sometimes it's a case of how tight your tension is to how well they line up. So I hope that wasn't too confusing. Please leave a comment if it was. If it wasn't and you liked it, please like and subscribe and share even this video. I'm hoping it is keeping people nice and occupied during this coronavirus that we've got going on at the moment. But yeah, this is pretty much my video for today, and I hope you guys have an awesome day. Bye!